This episode is brought to you by Coffee Mate. Coffee Mate is the world's biggest coffee lover because we love all the ways you enjoy. Wait. Coffee Mate can't love coffee more than me. I'm a foodie. I went to Kyoto just for a nitro matcha latte. What? Oh, I have to finish the ad. Coffee Mate, for the love of coffee.
Hello, and welcome to Dyslexia Devoted, the podcast dedicated to building awareness, understanding, and strategies to help those with dyslexia. I'm your host, Lisa Parnello, dyslexia therapist and founder of Parnello Education Services. Join me as we dive into today's episode of Dyslexia Devoted. Hello, and welcome to episode 114 of Dyslexia Devoted, where we ask, do kids really need to know Latin and Greek? Now, this episode is to chat about some of the things that are going to be coming up in this week's live workshop, Morphology in the Content Areas. So this is the last workshop in the live workshop series I'm hosting this month if you're listening to this in real time. So if you would like to learn how Greek and Latin roots can help kids in various content areas so that they can improve their vocabulary and comprehension, I would love for you to join me this Saturday, September 21st, 2024. If you are not listening to this in real time, there will be a recorded version available to you as well. And so just register at parnelloeducation.com/workshops. We've had a great turnout at the last two workshops for Dyslexia for Beginners and the Writing Booster workshop that just happened this weekend. And it's been really great to get to talk to you guys in real time and get your feedback and hear the things that you guys have been struggling with so that I can better help you through the podcast and upcoming courses. So today's episode is all about wondering if kids really need to learn Greek and Latin. Now, I have a couple of mixed feelings on this, and mostly because of a very recent experience with a student of mine. She changed schools, and this child has dyslexia, obviously, which is why she's one of my clients. And the school insisted that she has to take Latin, and that it would be easier for her than taking Spanish. And I'll be honest, I have some mixed feelings on this, because I'm a huge proponent of teaching kids Greek and Latin roots. I think it is an excellent way to help kids better understand the words that they come across that they've never heard of before, because if they understand the morphology within it, they can figure out pretty close to what a word means, whether it's literally or figuratively. And I think it is so important for kids to learn these Greek and Latin roots. But I am questioning if it is really important for a kid to actually learn Latin itself, because nobody speaks Latin anymore, but a lot of languages are based on it. And the school's thought on it is that this child, if they get good at Latin, it'll make Spanish easier later on. My thought on it is actually, wait, why are we teaching this kid 2 extra languages instead of just 1 extra language? This child had a hard enough time learning English to read and spell, and now you want them to learn Latin that they will never use in their day-to-day lives, in conversation at least. That same child will also still have to switch to Spanish later on by the time they get to high school or something. And the plan is that they will also have to take another language later. And that's where I have a bit of struggle with it. Of why are we asking a child to learn a language that is not currently spoken any longer, and then they also have to learn another language? I'll be honest, I'm waiting to see if I'm wrong. And I'm okay with being wrong. I would love to take this as a learning experience. The troubles I'm having are there are vowel patterns in original Latin that we don't use anymore. So while I get it as a linguistic perspective on how helpful it can be to learn the meaning of words in various languages because there are so many Latin-based languages, I also wonder, do we really need to teach a child who struggles with reading another set of phonetic patterns that they're not really going to be using in their everyday life sometimes, and then also teaching them yet another language in a couple years that uses different patterns? So the jury's out on that one. We shall see. I'm very curious how it goes. And I'll be fully honest, as I'm trying to help this child with her Latin homework, I've never taken traditional Latin. I've done lots of study on morphology and the roots that we use that came from those languages, but the way we spell them in modern English is not necessarily the same as the way that they spelled them in traditional Latin. And so a lot of times we talk more about the word elements, the essence of what came from Latin that we now use in our modern day language. and we don't necessarily use it in the same way as the actual root word where it came from in original Latin, spelled the way it was spelled back then. And then we have the flip side of the coin. It is so important for kids to be able to derive meaning from words they've never heard of before. Just like when I teach kids to read in English, I have them practice reading with nonsense words because we need students to know how to apply the language skills that they've learned to decode a word, even if it's something they've never heard of before. So especially when kids get into high school and middle school, they're reading about all these new topics they've never heard of before. And so it basically feels like nonsense to them until they learn what it means. And so we teach kids to decode words based on phonetic patterns. And that way, if they come across an unfamiliar word, they'll at least know how to read it. And then they can ask somebody what it means, or they can look up a definition. And so morphology helps us to teach kids how to do this linguistically with the meaning of these words. And by using Greek and Latin roots, we can determine what this word probably means, even if we've never heard of it before. My favorite example is the girl that was reading a word to me in her science textbook that was geothermic. And I asked her, well, what does that mean? And she tells me, well, you taught me that geo means earth and thermo means heat or temperature. So it has to do with the heat and temperature of the earth. And without having ever heard of this word before, she could figure out a basic understanding of what that word means. And if we can help kids to know how to decode the meaning of words, not just how to sound them out and how to spell them, then we can also teach them how to understand it better. Kids with dyslexia are often very far behind in some of their vocabulary unless they're around people with really high vocabularies and they hear it all the time, because a lot of our language comes from text, from the things we read. And if you hate reading or you're reading below grade level, you are not as exposed to all of that rich language. So we need to be able to fill in those gaps of where their missing vocabulary might be so that they can learn how to approach new words and figure out what they mean, not through guessing, but through the science of analyzing the word itself and figuring out what it means. And additionally, we can help kids get better at their spelling. When kids understand the morphology of it, they know the base of this word is spelled this way. So even if a child has never tried to spell a word before, and maybe they've never seen it, if they know which basic morphological elements are within that word, they can figure out the different pieces of the word and put it all together to spell it correctly, or at least close to correctly. So this weekend, I will be working with parents and educators to build up their repertoire with morphology. And we are going to be talking about how we can use these Greek and Latin roots in order to help kids build up their vocabulary and how we can apply it to different subject areas. Not just something that can help you in English or language arts class, but something that you can apply to all sorts of different classes like history class and science class. And when it's time to do writing, if we can get a student to generalize their skills into a variety of ways to apply in different classes, that will really help them to expand their knowledge and vocabulary no matter what the subject matter is. If we can teach them some of the core things to help build up that vocabulary development and give them tools and strategies to figure out what words mean. It's not a matter of I know what that means or I don't know what it means. It's, hey, I think I can figure out pretty close to what this means. That is very powerful because a lot of times kids think, well, I either know what a word means or I don't, and that's just the end of it. And that doesn't have to be that way. There is strategies that we can use to teach kids what words mean or pretty closely mean by using morphology of Greek and Latin roots. So I hope you join me this weekend. Once again, you can sign up for it at parnelloeducation.com/workshops. And this is the very last one of our back to school workshop series. Thank you so much for joining me in it, because this has been a giant experiment. Very much like my ability to learn Latin this year will be a giant experiment as I help this child take a class that I myself have never taken. I am a total word nerd, and I'm excited to learn about it. And I'm ready to be proven wrong that maybe learning complete Latin is just as helpful as learning Greek and Latin roots. We shall see. And as a total word nerd, I actually kind of thought about signing up for my own Latin class just so that I could learn it for the morphology reasons. So we'll see how this year goes. Maybe it'll inspire me to take a real class myself. All right. That is it for today. I'm so glad you joined me for our podcast, and I really hope to see you this Saturday at the last workshop. So morphology in the content areas will be at 9 a.m. on September 21st, and that's at Pacific time. And it is recorded, so anybody who can't attend live will automatically get the recording sent to them. All right, that's it for today. See you this weekend. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. If you want to learn even more about dyslexia, check out parnelloeducation.com/courses. See you next time.